And welcome to We Talk Sports Good, as we have a special show tonight here with Thomas and Randall joining with a special guest, our favorite UMHB professor of all time and the current chair of sport event and tourism management at Liberty University, Dr. Hatfield.
Woo! Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to see you and hear your voices, catch up again, and then spend some time talking sports.
Well, thanks for taking the time, and just want to give you here a brief minute on just kind of introduce or anything interesting, fun facts you want to share, or any social media that you want to plug, as that's what we always make sure to let our guests do.
So I've been teaching sport management for almost 20 years. It's amazing how life and sports and students have changed over the years. My time at UMHB was really, really special. I really, really have fond memories of being there. I think that very obviously we're in a challenging time in our country. We're in a challenging time in the world, and it's going to be fun to spend a little bit of time talking about something that we love and looking ahead to sports coming back and us having the opportunity to see the stands full and hear the roar of the crowd and watch our teams and our athletes compete again. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah. Well, just any opportunity now with slowly sports kind of starting to pop back on TV. I know I was recording the Korean Baseball League I had set so that I was not waking up at 4 a.m, but I could just kind of turn it on through my day, and it's actually pretty entertaining, but it's of course just not the same. So definitely excited to just get back to sports. We just want to let you know, Randall and I know Thomas would agreed on the vote, but Dr. Hatfield, Randall and I had voted you UMHB Professor Mount Rushmore.
Absolutely.
You guys are sweet. Let me tell you, I don't know that I have a student Mount Rushmore, but if I did, you guys would for sure be on it. For sure be on it. I need to think about that because that's awesome. Yeah.
So we'll get started. We have, of course, some topics, and we'll kind of evolve from there. And of course, first one, we had just before we had started, kind of want to start it off with, as we mentioned, return to sports. We have the NBA announced their format return. We've had some. I know PGA had the Colonial here in Fort Worth, was on TV. NBA returning. We've got NHL returning. NASCAR has even been back on the track now, not virtually, but just golf's back, yes. The importance of the return of sport, and if you have any thoughts you wanted to share on the format that NBA is going to try to use here.
So I think one of the things that's important for us to do is to step back just a little bit and talk about how sports plays a very, very important role in our society. I think that we can see many of our American values play out on the fields and courts. And we also see things that we observe in sport. We see those things carry over or carry back toward society. And so I think it's going to be very important for us to have sports because they are that microcosm and do allow us to display our American values, whether that's, competition, winning or losing, that opportunity to sort of cheer for the underdog, be a part of a team or a part of our community. And so sport also allows us to display those values, but then it gives us a chance to escape from some of the challenges that we're facing. And so in our current situation, and unlike other times, maybe we could look back to 9/11, maybe we could look back to Katrina, we saw sports, they were an opportunity for us to demonstrate recovery, to demonstrate our patriotism, and to demonstrate unity. And right now, without sports, we're sort of missing not just the diversion and not just the excitement that they bring to our lives, but we're also missing sort of that element of recovery as we're trying to come out of some of the quarantine and some of the lockdown related to COVID-19. So I know you asked specifically about the NBA. I just would say that I have walked down the hall in my home as I've been working from home so many times, wanting to just turn on a baseball game and listen to the ball hit the bat and the crowd cheer and all of that. And it's not available to us. So it's very exciting to think about what you guys just mentioned, and the NBA specifically, to think about the return. I think that the NBA has done a great job to develop a workable format. There is no perfect solution. So they could have gone with 4 or 5, they would have had several to choose from, and they could have chosen any of them. And that none of them are going to be perfect. And I think that no matter what they would have suggested or tried to go with, some would be supported and some would not. The Trailblazers, as we know, voted no, and that was the consensus within their organization, and I applaud them for being willing to be a lone dissenter. And it's challenging, really, to be the first of the big four to return to play. But I think the NBA has done a good job to address health issues, to address revenue issues, and then to really try to come up with something that is going to provide the opportunity for us to have professional basketball games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with what you're saying about how much sports can bring everybody together and it being a rallying point, I think that shows even how much we've missed it by. This is probably, I don't know if you've seen this at all, but there's this guy from Barstool Sports who's been streaming him play a college football video game from 2014, and people have been watching it more than like major sporting events, and because it's some type of sports, and it shows how much people are just craving it, and the Jordan dog and everything. I mean, people are really missing it, and to have it back in any type of fashion is incredible, and it feels great.
Well, and I think we can also look at the rates of watch for the NFL draft, mm-hmm. and we can see that was one of the most highly rated drafts ever. And I think part of it is because of this lockdown. We're so eager to sort of look ahead and see these young men celebrate their accomplishments and then look at what is going to be next and sort of this transition into what we're hoping will bring back some normalcy to us. I was showing a video in one of my classes, and it was of a PGA tournament, and they have the balls going into the hole and you hear the crowd roar. It was like I got chills because I haven't heard that in so long, and we miss that, and it's an important part of our lives.
Absolutely. By the way, did not hate the format of the draft. I kind of liked it. It was nice to see everybody at their house with their families and getting emotional there. Opposed to what I don't know.
I think I liked it better than what they were originally planning in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm. Right. I know Tom would have loved those Las Vegas Raiders there, though.
It was a floating stage.
Yes. Yes. Of course.
In the giant Roomba Stadium.
Also, we were talking about format, and I think that the NBA has done a good job to say these are the teams. This is how we've chosen them. We've looked at sort of late season runs, and this is the best way that we think, or this is the rationale that we have used to make these decisions. Because, like I said, there's any number of ways that you can do this, and so you just simply have to take certain things, like we said, health and revenue and all that into consideration, and then you have to make a choice and be able to defend your choice because no one's going to like it. And so I think what they've done is very, very interesting, and I, again, applaud them for pushing ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and we actually, I guess if we didn't say off the top of the show, this is a pre-recorded show, and we actually had our live show last night, mm-hmm. and we dove into the playoffs a little bit, and I think they also definitely looked at star power on that, because mm-hmm. we were noticing that, like, there's, I think it's 13 West teams and 9 East teams.
Sure.
And it's because when you look, part of it is that they played off of, well, okay, so the Suns are not that good, but Devin Booker is a star in the NBA right now, and he's going to have people watching him more than whoever, I can't remember who the 10 and 11 seed were. Yeah, no one knows anybody in the Hornets. Everyone just knows Jordan owns the team or owns part of the team. So they definitely one-off performance, but you can tell they had money signs in their eyes too when they were when they were planning it out. Which,
well, I mean, they don't have a choice. One of the things I was looking at said that the NBA was looking at a $1 billion shortfall.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think that was an NBC report that I saw as well, about how much they were going to be losing just playoffs.
Yeah, so okay, they did. They did choose based upon star power. At some point, that's going to trickle down to each team, so that's going to be important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you this because we had UMHB great basketball player Jalen Jury on, and we asked because they had talked about using NBA 2K video game crowd noises. How do you feel about kind of pumping in the fake noise? I know some soccer teams have done it pretty well in Europe, but the NBA is talking about using a video game sound.
I think it's fantastic. And here's why I'll tell you that I think it's fantastic. When I stand in a classroom, I stood in a classroom with you guys, I can look at you, you can look at me, and there's an energy and an exchange that takes place in that environment because we can see each other and we're talking, we're communicating. And when I had to put my students on a virtual platform, and so I'm looking at dots or I'm looking at a PowerPoint slide, and there is no interaction, no communication at all, I can't tell if someone has a question. If I'm looking at you, I can tell. You give me a funny look on your face, and I can say, okay, Randall, you have a question, obviously, and you can ask your question, right? But if I can't see you, then we don't have that same kind of communication. And I would say that I would be 100% on board with crowd noise, especially sort of generated crowd noise that already sounds like what takes place at a game. So yeah, I think they've got to do that.
I really like
it. Also covers up.
Oh, you finished.
Go ahead. I was just saying, it also just covers up the chatter from because you can't have being able to hear the players on the court because they're not going to censor themselves at all.
Right. Nor can you have the coaches. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Nor
can easily ruin people's
That's
careers.
another great point, is that we're not interested in hearing all of that language.
Right.
Wow. I was going to say, I really like at least how the European soccer has done it, because they actually have a guy on like a soundboard, and they have their different chants that they play at certain times. So I mean, I've seen the videos there. It has a really good feel to, I think, the European soccer. But I know Randall brought up a good point. If it's a guy on a soundboard, what's the chance he messes up really bad and it's like a dunk and they accidentally hit like a boo, or like the wrong button on a big play?
Yeah. I just think you have to figure out how to do that. If someone makes a mistake, okay, but the downside of not doing it, I think it's much more significant than the upside with a mistake,
I mean, it's a chance for a virtual.
I can be sitting here for my team, and then you can be sitting there, so we're almost like dueling crowd noise, I mean, you could even. There's a lot of ways you could do that.
I mean,
they could also implement a little bit how the NFL drafted it, where they had live fan reactions going on in the background. You could do that without showing their screens.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I guess if someone did mess up, though, like I know you mentioned the other day, Randall, I mean, you just made a viral hit on a funny video. Definitely going to go make the rounds.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, the right social media manager can make the right kind of joke about that, and it's exactly what you're saying. That now becomes viral in a positive way, and we got all kinds of followers and all that for sure.
Yeah. I guess thinking of obviously talking about the great return of NBA and all the other sports that we have going on already. It's kind of restarting up. I guess in the opposite direction, we have a very big stalemate going on between MLB and the Players Association going on. I guess I wanted to ask, do you think the push of other sports making kind of already a return happening? It feels like they've been on very different sides, and the counter offers have seemed to sometimes be very ridiculous at the same point. Do you think there's actually a chance of no baseball, as what was it, the 94 strike, where they just ended the year? So, I mean,
sure.
Baseball is one to take a strong stand either side. So I was just curious, do you think that, either way, will baseball return or not this year?
So I would like to think that because we have two professional leagues who are really working at this, that the league where the players stand the farthest apart would be able to figure out how to make it happen. And so while I agree with you that it's been very interesting to see sort of how different this process has been with baseball, I would like to think that two other leagues would provide maybe some positive peer pressure to encourage them that, we're doing this, we interact closely with each other, whereas maybe in baseball, the players are farther apart. They have limited contact with each other. And they also have, some level of protective equipment different from, basketball players that are right on each other, right? With no helmets, no protective gear really at all. So I would like to think that they would feel some positive peer pressure from the other two leagues.
So to piggyback off of that, I saw some, proposed rule for baseball when it comes back. For me personally, like, I don't agree with them because I saw some ridiculous ones like no spitting, like no high fives and stuff like that.
No sunflower seeds.
I honestly can't see, like, yes, we want baseball to come back, but I would be miserable on a baseball field if I couldn't just spit. Like, sunflower seeds and baseball just go together. And I just don't see a ball player, signing up for that and being okay with, okay, you can't spit. And then also, like, how do you feel about, or like what's just your opinion on that? Like, and how are they even going to manage that if those are true?
Right. So I think it's going to be, baseball's got to decide, are these what I would consider to be minor annoyances or minor discomforts, are those significant enough to get rid of an entire season? And so I love baseball, but I haven't spent any time in a dugout, right? There's a unique culture, there's a unique atmosphere there that includes many of the things that you're talking about, right? And so for me, while I would miss that in a very, very small way, I would like to see baseball as America's pastime, as America's game, to say, at some level we have a responsibility. And I realize that, we're talking about some life and death situations here, and so I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but I would like to think that they would be able to say, we are an important part of summer in America, and so let's do what we can to make it happen. I think the other thing is that, do you put, referees or officials in the dugout to make sure that people aren't spitting or high-fiving, and then what do? Levy fines, and then that's going to become a joke,
Right.
This is my $45 sunflower spit. You know what I mean? It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Right.
And Thomas, I can tell you, I won't go into how everything we've done, but like I can tell you at my job, we've faced that already with youth sports and stuff like that, is having to find ways, or not ways around it, but ways to continue to open up and start allowing play with these certain things, and social distancing and the different aspects of it. But like you can do it. It's possible. It's just it takes a little bit more effort, but it's definitely possible, and I think they can come to a fair agreement and figure something out.
And I think also, we talked in the economics class about opportunity cost. It's like, maybe that's not what you want to do. Maybe new rules and modifications and some of these things are not what you want to do. But what are you giving up if you are unwilling to do those things? And I think that we've got to look at that and be willing to make some adjustments.
Well, I guess I'll go with, say baseball does return, pick your format on how they do it. Interesting thing, I guess I know with different states, how they've reopened. Interesting thing that has been mentioned, I know I saw Evan Grant, who is one of the Rangers reporters, is the Rangers would be one of the teams that would have fans allowed at the game.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
it'll be interesting. I guess curious if, I mean, granted, 25% of a stadium's a lot different, but the team that, like the Rangers and I mean the Astros can too, have some fans versus a team that, I mean, you probably look at most California teams probably won't.
Right. Right.
I guess just the impact. Do you think either way on maybe the team, kind of how their direction will go, even just financially? Will they pick up more fans on TV, or does it hurt their fan base and maybe they start, the fair weather guy kind of starts looking elsewhere?
So it would seem to me that that would have a positive impact on their fan base, right? Even if I can't go to a game, let's say that I have a family member who's in a compromised position, right? And so I'm very careful about my own social distancing and personal protective equipment, et cetera, not because of myself, but because of a family member.
Mm-hmm.
I would be thrilled to be able to watch my team on TV or listen to my team on the radio. So I would want them to play even if I couldn't go to the games. And I might be willing to even pay, provide a donation or get some kind of special shirt or join a special club, such that I'm providing some revenue, not the full cost of my season tickets or the full cost of attendance, but such that I'm actually supporting the bottom line of my team of choice.
Definitely kind of wanted to push along to college and high school athletics here.
Yes.
For the majority here, so I didn't want to miss out too much. So I kind of wanted to I'll actually turn over to Randall. I know he had a kind of a bigger broad question on kind of just the overall each level of athletics in college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think something that I was interested in what you would think about this is the fact that I know in your classes we talk so much about there is these major sports for each college that, yes, they're bringing in a revenue for the school or turning a profit, but then there's lots of sports that are not. They're actually losing the school quite a bit of money, and I'm wondering if something like this pushes them more towards the mass, maybe either putting those sports on hold or shutting them down altogether, just because we're already at a point where we're losing money, and then adding that on where we'd be losing even more money on these sports, if that's like kind of a turning point where they start shutting some of those sports down at these colleges.
So the answer to your question is yes. I mean, there have been several schools that have gotten rid of Olympic sports.
Mm-hmm.
Several schools have gotten rid of maybe men's swimming and diving. Those are not necessarily spectator sports. The suits that those competitors wear are expensive. Those $400 to $500, not training suits, but their competition suits are very expensive. And so in those situations, yes, we have seen programs that have been cut because these institutions do not have the revenue. So when we're thinking about, let's just look at intercollegiate athletics broadly. So while we have certain programs certainly that turn a profit, the major money makers in those, the revenue drivers in those, are typically football and men's basketball, occasionally women's basketball, occasionally baseball, and in some situations softball. And so when those programs, maybe even in some of our smaller institutions, those programs are not turning a profit, but they are certainly provide the opportunity for some revenue to offset the expenses. And so when we lose even those small amounts or smaller amounts of revenue, then that is going to have a very negative impact on what we're able to do within our athletic department. And so we've got to make very careful decisions. And so maybe we cut something like cross country, which is not a spectator sport, right? There's not really an opportunity for us to regain or recoup revenue in sports that are not spectator friendly, potentially. One of the issues with that is that maybe those distance runners do compete. Maybe they're essentially 3-sport athletes and that they run cross country, they run distance events in indoor track and distance events, and outdoor track. So I think we're going to continue to see athletic departments tighten their belts. We've seen coaches that have been furloughed. We've seen high-level coaches who have had their salaries cut 10%, 20%, 25%. And so I think that we are going to continue to see that in the wake of all this.
And I think, too, most people, when they think of college athletics, obviously their mind immediately goes to these, Power 5 conferences,
Yes.
And these big schools. But how much does this affect even more than those D1 schools, D2, D3, NAIA, schools like that?
Well, I would say one of the benefits that those maybe smaller institutional classifications have is that A, their budgets weren't so large. B, they're not as dependent on revenue that's generated, say, from ticket sales or sponsorship or media or donations, right? A significant portion of their budget comes from a student fee allocation. So what's going to hurt them is if there is a reduction in enrollment such that the student fee allocation drops. That's going to be difficult. And if we're talking about state institutions, because of the dip in revenues at the various state levels, that has the potential to mean less revenue or less allocation that comes from the state to those state institutions. If we're talking about private institutions, many of those are tuition driven. And so if there are student families who are experiencing very difficult times financially, then those students may not return. And so that would see also a drop there. Did that answer your question, Randall?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So, that's the kind of thing. It's sort of like, in a negative sense, 6 to 1, half dozen of the other. Like if you're Alabama football, you can generate tons and tons and tons of revenue. But what's going to happen with donations and what's going to happen with ticket sales? And if we're not having sports and therefore those games are not on television, then what are we doing on the SEC network? And then that, the funding that would be then distributed to the conferences as a result of that, it doesn't exist. So we've got to have, in my personal opinion, we've got to figure out a way to have college football such that those revenue streams at some level, while they may look different, something is better than nothing, from my perspective.
And yeah, something you said was the donors.
Yeah.
And how much do you think those people who are giving the school a lot of money?
Sure.
Just at UMHB, we have donors that have complete buildings and we have one donor that has a building named after him at UMHB and a stadium named after him at Baylor.
Yes.
So these guys are giving these people are giving a lot of money to these schools. Do they pull a lot of weight enough to speed up the process at all of sports coming on? Because they might have a lot of pull with the school themselves, but they might not necessarily have pull with NCAA. But I'm wondering if that sways the process of speeding it up at all.
Sure. I think that they do have some level of influence, but these decisions, while they are financial in nature at some level, I don't know that those donors would necessarily. I think that everyone's on that team of that we want to have these events, but we want to have them safely. And depending on their situation, they may still be willing to give. Because we're talking really about 1 year right now, as it appears, 1 year, 1 season. And so probably there are some savvy development officers out there who are going to be able to get some giving out of those donors and be able to come up with some really creative ways to reward those contributions.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, then I thought of, I know you mentioning kind of balancing all the sports. I had seen pop up, I want to say about a month ago. It had a little bit of traction, it seemed like, but the return of talks of the mega conferences. I know that was well back. There was the talks, of course, the Big 12, Pac-12 merging and all that, but maybe not necessarily just the Power 5 having some Power 5 merging. Maybe the Conference USA and MAC. I know travel is something they've already adjusted, but Sun Belt and Conference USA could, I think, at least looking at a kind of thing off the top of my head, I feel like they could geographically make a mega conference work pretty well. Do you think maybe we could see a trend in that kind of picking up steam or happening?
So again, I would go back to this idea of maybe we're looking at a 1-year solution, and it seems to me that we should open our minds to what possibilities exist rather than closing our minds to these are our existing conferences and make those very strict boundaries. It seems to me that it's better for everyone if we can get play happening. And I agree that we're going to see some challenges because of the geographic nature of this, what areas of the country are in fact open and what areas of the country are not. I think that's also going to be an issue. We're not talking about high school sports right now, but I do think that has the potential to be an issue. Are there going to be more rural areas that those programs are allowed to compete, and maybe more urban areas, or maybe it's even just the perspective of the governors in different states about who is and who is not going to be able to compete. So from my perspective, there are a lot of really, really smart people that have the opportunity to make these decisions and have influence. And I would hope that they would look for ways very safely, very carefully, but they would be looking for ways to support participation and competition rather than looking for ways to avoid it.
I do actually. I just want to let you know I still have my the project where we had to be the 80s and game contracts. I wanted to say that was the best project ever, and I still have it actually in my closet. I still kept that, so that was definitely one of the most fun projects I've ever done.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, and I've used it, as you guys know, I've used it at several places. It's used in the intro class here, and it is one of the best projects ever. In fact, I did it when I was an undergrad and I was UCLA, and it was a tremendous learning experience for me, and it's so fun to hear students say that. And I was so-and-so, and this is what we did, and every once in a while I'll get a message from a student, like on an opening weekend. This was one of my games. This Notre Dame, Texas was one that I've often seen. So yeah, I'm so glad.
I actually ran across my my marketing report that we all got minor league baseball teams. Omaha Storm, I believe, was my team. I ran across that literally a couple of days ago because my parents are starting to move out, and I found that, and I was thinking back. I don't know if I told you this, but I actually sent mine to them in hopes that they would offer me a job, and they didn't even email me back.
Oh, that's a great idea.
It is what it is. It's fine.
I love that.
I thought it was good, but that was just me.
Yeah, I noticed that the other day, so I just was like, oh yeah, I wanted to bring that up because I was like, I was going through it's in our kind of our junk closet, but I was like trying to dig something. I was like, wait a minute, I still have this, and I was like, it was Michigan, and I still remember because I had the most. I won on the revenue thanks to a great Notre Dame Michigan contract that brought a lot of money in.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and you got the extra bump for the nationally televised game. Yeah. It's awesome.
So, Thomas, I had a couple things I had thought of, but I didn't want to jump in if you had any thing you thought on top of your head.
No, man, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I know we had kind of talked. I wanted, curious on. Liberty had kind of quickly jumped up all the way to D1 here, and I remember I was briefly looking. I mean, they started at NAIA and D2 and subdivision, FCS, and now up to independent. I guess I'm actually really curious on independent football because, I mean, you think of just Notre Dame, but I know Liberty's tried. If I'm correct, you guys did the home and home during the season with New Mexico State, correct?
Yes, we did. Yes. So, one of the benefits, and there are many, but one of the benefits of being in a conference is, there's sort of that built-in schedule for you. Mm-hmm. And so we were able, under the leadership of Ian McCaw to make the transition to FBS. And so that really propelled us into, a different level of competition and all of that. And so, but you do have to sort of figure out your schedule, and that's challenging. And so that's why we ended up with the home and home. And I think we played, so we played New Mexico State, both.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I think I said this maybe as we were sort of talking before we got started, but athletics has always been an important part of Liberty University. When Dr. Falwell Sr. founded the institution, athletics was an important part of what he wanted to be included. And it was his desire for Liberty as an educational institution to be a first choice for evangelical Christian young people in the way that Brigham Young was, and in the way that Notre Dame was. And so he wanted not just an institution that trained pastors and teachers and missionaries, but he wanted students to be prepared in a wide range of disciplines. And he wanted them to be prepared from a biblical perspective so that they could go out and impact the world. And so he believed that athletics was an important part of that. And we know that athletics is the front porch to an institution and those kinds of things. And so as Liberty has been able to generate significant revenues through a very dynamic online program that has also supported facility development and those kinds of things on our campus. And so it's been very exciting to watch the growth and watch the development. Our men's basketball team has been very successful with a Sweet 16 run. With a 12-5 upset the year before. And we were all very optimistic about what they might be able to do this year. Women's basketball has enjoyed good success, and many other teams. Baseball, softball have enjoyed really, really good financial support in terms of large coaching staffs and really, really excellent facilities. And there's the Liberty Athletic Center with amazing tutoring and amazing computer labs and all the support that a student athlete would need as they are trying to achieve their academic and their athletic goals.
And if I'm correct, all the rest of your sports are in the athletic or the A10, correct?
The ASUN, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So the ASUN does not, and there's one exception, I'll talk about that in a second. The ASUN does not sponsor football.
Okay.
And so that was a decision that was seen as the opportunity to move ahead with some of our other sports. And then from the Big South Conference into the ASUN, and then football would compete as an independent. We do have an excellent field hockey program, and our women's field hockey program competes as a member of the Big East, which is the top women's field hockey conference. And so that is an incredible program. I want to say they've been top 25, maybe better than that, maybe more like top 20, top 15. So they're excellent.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to say they're a really good baseball conference, if I'm correct.
Yes. The ASUN is a strong baseball conference, yes. Yeah. And I couldn't tell you the exact number, but our programs in our first year in the ASUN were very, very successful. Our track and field and cross country programs have been very, very successful. And our longstanding coach Brent Tolsma, just recently retired after, I'm going to say 30 plus years. He was a successful coach when I was a student athlete at Liberty way back in the day, and has really done a tremendous job of mentoring coaches and leading young athletes with really a positive set of priorities. There's really a clear biblical integration into that program. And in one of the coaching classes that I teach, I was able to interview, essentially Q&A with two of his coaches, and they're just tremendous. So.
I know you had mentioned it when we were talking about college athletics, but kind of briefly just kind of touch here real quick, as Thomas has the experience here with high school athletics being very much
that's my time to shine.
So just kind of wanted to touch on that. I guess I'll let you take this away since you have that kind of in-house experience.
Oh yeah, I've been waiting. So we are currently right now we are in College Station We are running an elite camp with over 500 kids, and it's been really, really weird, but really encouraging at the same time.
Sure.
Because I feel like the state of Texas is using high school athletics because, as you know, UIL, or if you didn't know, UIL opened up to where schools can run summer workouts starting on June 8th. And, of course, we took the liberty of starting on June 8th.
Right.
So my question is, like, do you think that, you know, the games and stuff will have an impact on, like, as far as the different rules? So, like I said, the baseball rules of, you know, like, how do you think the minimal contact, or how do you think they're going to work around that and not just completely destroy football with petty rules and just the overprotection of trying to keep people safe? And I guess that goes along the board for you know, for all of football. But how do you think they're going to go around that?
Well, there could be some additional protective equipment. For example, they could ask football players to wear shields, and I know that, you know, there are some that do that already, but they could build those into helmets. They could establish some rules regarding some level of social distancing in terms of huddles and those kinds of things. But if they want to completely change the rules of the game, I think that there's going to be some backlash, like exactly what you were talking about with sunflower seeds and high fives, right? I mean, we want to see our teams play. We want to see them play the games that we love. And so they're going to have to we'll have to see what happens with the NBA, because that's going to be close contact, clearly not the same as football, but it's still going to be that very close physical contact. But gloves and other kinds of protective equipment that could easily be added to a football uniform, those would be some things that they would be considering.
Do you think that they're going to be they would make every player on the field wear gloves?
I think that we're going to have to see sort of where things are at that time. And I think that is a possibility. I'm not in any way saying I think that's a recommendation. I think that when we think about personal protective equipment, that gloves are one of the things that we think of. And we see football players who wear gloves already, and so it's not a tremendous stretch to think that we could ask more players to wear them.
Okay, and this is kind of my last question. As it pertains to all football, once again, this is like on the extreme scale. I know there's some training masks. I know Marshawn Lynch has been pictured in one, and that's like the only one that's coming up in my mind. And this is kind of for if, you know, all three of you want to answer. But do you think that there's like anything like I don't want them to come out and say, okay, here's a mask that is approved that everyone has to wear, and like go and that would go along, you know, what I was saying earlier about baseball. Like, do you think that players would wear? Like, do you think that players would wear the mask to play the game, or do you think they'd rather just sit out and not have to wear the mask?
So I think it comes back to, if you're going to cut my paycheck in half, or I'm going to receive a third of my paycheck, maybe I would be willing to wear something. Obviously, it would have to be something that would be sort of like the word I'm looking for is like technically breathable, or, you know, whatever. It would have to be techie in that way that it would be useful. And it's also something that could be collectively bargained, and so that maybe there's some players or positions who clearly have more close contact than others. And so the players would be able to have a voice through the Players Association and collectively, you know, bargain for, this is what we're willing to do.
Okay, so to take away getting paid and switch that to high school sports, do you think there would be a drop in high school participation, or would you think that they were just, you know, like, hey, we're here to play and I'm still trying to prove something, or do you think that you know, there'd be a slip up in that?
I think when we're talking about high school sports, there's another part of it that is parents and whether or not they feel like that's safe for their kids and want their kids to play. So, you know, I lived in Texas for 5 years, 2 years when I was at UMHB with you guys. And to understand football in Texas, there's no comparison to what football in Texas is to what football is in other states. I mean, I lived in Georgia for 7 years, and it's important, but it's still different. And so I think that there would be some parental involvement, and maybe that would push kids to wear masks and play, or there would be parental involvement that would be different, that wouldn't exist when we're talking about professional sports.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to shift one more time to the sport management world itself. And this might be putting you on the spot a little bit, and this will be the last thing before we put you on the spot even more with the 2 minute.
Oh my gosh.
But give me an elevator pitch, if you will, to someone who's coming out of high school, who's going into college for the first time, who loves the sports world but is not sure if sport management is the right thing for them. Just kind of sell them on what sport management as a major and a career path would be for them, and why it's, I think why all three of us fell in love with it. 4 of us.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I would say that the opportunity to be a part of a team, the opportunity to be a part of something larger than yourself, the opportunity to still be connected even when you are no longer participating as an athlete, and to be able to provide opportunities like you had as an athlete, the opportunity to hear the roar of a crowd, to fill an arena and create sort of this amazing experience. I think all of those are reasons why someone should consider a career in the sport industry. I do think it's important for people to decide, is this something I want to work in, or do I just want to be an accountant and have a box? Because being a fan is different from working in the sport industry, but there is nothing like being down there on the court or being down there on the field and looking up and seeing the crowd and the lights come on and just the rush of energy that takes place when it's time for those events to happen.
Absolutely. And I guess just anything you want to say about how much sport management has evolved, I think, over the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years, just how much it's progressed. Because you see, so many more sport management programs popping up, and what they can do, because it's so much more broad than people think it is too. I feel like, because for me, I went through sport management and I ended up in Parks and Recreation, and I'm still with sports. So
yes.
Just kind of how it's evolved a little bit.
So I think initially, and we still fight this battle sometimes, that someone will say, what do you do? Well, I'm a faculty member in sport management. So that means athletic training? No. That means your students want to be treatment? No. It means that my students work in the front offices of minor league and professional sports teams. They work in intercollegiate athletics. They work in parks and recreation. They work in youth sports. Some of them work in health and fitness. Some of them work in sponsorship or equipment. And so I would say that one of the things is that there are more opportunities. The sport industry itself has expanded, and so there are more opportunities. I would also say that students are significantly more savvy. They understand the importance of an internship. They understand the importance of professional network. They understand that they're going to start at the bottom and they're going to work their way up within the organization and or within the industry. And so I think that all of those things demonstrate sort of the maturation, maybe, of our academic discipline, as well as the connection from our academic discipline to these professional positions.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think that was the perfect thing, because I think, to me, when I came out, I always had that dream of, my initial dream was I want to be a sports agent. Well, once you get there, you realize it's a little bit more difficult than it sounds.
Right. No, and that's a challenging life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but just to take, I think it was difficult for me to take that leap because I didn't know everything that sport management was and could be.
Sure.
I had that more narrow view of it, and just taking that leap, I think is so important. So having someone like you to be able to tell someone why it's something that they should go for, I think is really important.
Sure. Good.
Well, that was a different on the spot. Now we are going to a great segment, Randall's 2-minute drill. We first had this on. We had an interview with Anthony the Gut Johnson, a former FIU defensive tackle, who actually was playing in the XFL for the Dragons. Correct? He was actually making some plays. I remember seeing highlights from him. He was in camp with the Bucks, so that's when we had talked with him after he came out with the Bucks, and then before knowing he was going to play for the XFL, which team, but. Randall had him stumped a couple times, I think. So.
Oh gosh, I know he's gonna hurt me.
So with that, I'm getting the timer ready here, and I will start it after Randall's first question.
Basically, just quick questions. We'll run down a list. You just answer how you want. First thing that comes to your mind. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I will start it on your first question, Randall.
What's your favorite subject to teach?
I love teaching sport communications.
Awesome.
And I love teaching leadership.
Awesome. Is pineapple on pizza an abomination?
No.
Oh. Are DJs just people who are really good at iTunes?
Yes.
MJ or LeBron?
Oh, man. I am LeBron.
Oh, wow. Okay. Am I crazy to say that Forrest Gump is an overrated movie?
Yes.
It's so overrated. It's so long. It's not that good. What's up with that Billie Eilish girl? Can you explain?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, me too. I don't get it. I just know there's someone that sounds like that she's famous somehow. Is Roger Goodell a good commissioner?
Oh wow. Here's what I'll say. I enjoyed him on the NFL draft.
Fair enough. All right. Are Cowboys fans the worst part of the NFL?
No, Raiders fans are the worst part of the NFL.
Ooh, okay. Go-to karaoke song. Do you have one?
Oh, gosh. You've lost that Levin feeling.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sing it.
Who is your favorite student, me or Dom?
Oh, wow. So, given that, I have to go with Thomas, right? Yes.
That was what I was scared you were going to say. NSYNC or Backstreet Boys?
Backstreet Boys?
Fair enough. If someone asks you how you know something, do you respond with, because I'm a doctor?
But then I have to quickly caveat it with, but maybe not that kind of doctor.
15 seconds.
Yeah, still a doctor. It counts. You should say that.
Yes.
Sopranos or Breaking Bad?
Ooh. I'm going to go with Sopranos, but I have very limited experience.
Fair enough. Yankees or Red Sox?
Oh.
You can say the
Monster Red Sox.
5.
Fair enough. Lakers
4,
or Celtics?
3.
Lakers.
2.
Is We Talk Sports Good better than ESPN?
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll take that as a yes.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. You've done it. You passed the 2-minute drill.
We can air this interview now.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
LeBron
There might need to be some cuts. You guys feel free to make some cuts.
LeBron over MJ?
I know, that's a really tough call. I don't like LeBron. Are we still recording? I don't like LeBron. I did like LeBron when he was with the Heat with D Wade.
Okay, fair enough. See,
I did not care for the whole the decision thing, but once he got there, I liked him.
See, I'm not a LeBron fan at all, and the only MJ I remember is Wizards MJ. To be honest. And so, like, in my mind, I like MJ, but I know if I would have been actually there and remembering him, I probably would have hated MJ at the time. So
yeah, I really do like Michael Jordan, but I don't know.
Fair enough.
LeBron is a freakishly gifted athlete.
Yeah, he is. He absolutely is.
That's about right. Well, actually, I want to ask before wrap it up. For the recording, I want to ask because we always need to know for our future 2-minute drills. What was your favorite question?
Oh my gosh, those were incredible. Like I probably I don't watch I don't watch Sopranos and Breaking Bad. I'm just like sort of vaguely familiar. I mean I can't even tell you. Those were great, and I love that they're the order of them because you don't know what's coming. So, and I love that it's all different genres.
Well, perfect. Well, thanks for tuning in for our pre-recorded interview, and catch us next